Okay, we have Sarah on the line, right? Okay. Oh, yeah, it could be. Sorry. All right. Is everybody ready?
Ladies?
Thanks. All right. We're all set? Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Governing Board. It's starting at 5 o'clock for the purpose of being able to hold a public hearing. Let the record show that we do have all 5 board members present. Ms. Smith is participating telephonically. At this time, is there any change to the agenda?
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. No, there is not.
Okay. At this time, I need a motion.
I will motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Ms. Pimentel?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. At this time, would you all join me for a moment of silence, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, the meeting will recess for the purpose of holding a public hearing on the proposed sexual health curricula in accordance with Arizona Revised Statute 15-711, Arizona Revised Statute 15-113, and Arizona Revised Statute 15-102. Members of the public are invited to make comments and ask questions during the public hearing. It will go as followed. We'll first have a presentation regarding the proposed sexual health curricula, followed by questions and comments from board members, then questions and comments from the public, and then we will adjourn the public hearing and reconvene to regular meeting. At this time, do I have a motion to recess?
I will motion to recess for public hearing.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Ms. Pimentel?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Ms. Agata-Jones.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Louis Lafitte. Dr. Lafitte, would you please take a moment to introduce your team?
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Agata-Jones. This evening, I'll be joined by Ms. Andrea Arellano, who is our District Director of Social Emotional Learning, and Karina Herrera from Touchstone, who will be joining us for this evening to help hopefully answer any questions that anyone from the board or the community may have. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So, board, as you are aware, at our last board meeting on September 23rd, you adopted policies IHA-MB and policy KB, which dealt with sexual education curriculum. They were both, that was embedded within those policies. And as a part of those changes that came through that new adoption, part of it was, and I want to highlight a couple of things before we go through this, any meetings on sex education curriculum will be posted at least 2 weeks prior, just to kind of go through the process to how we're getting here. Any curriculum will be posted 2 weeks prior. So 2 weeks ago, we posted that we would have a public hearing for tonight's meeting, and we're going to have 2 of these meetings. And making any proposed sex education course study available and accessible for review and public comment for at least 60 days prior to approval. And so today is the beginning of that process that we're going to share information about the curriculum that we're proposing, and then holding at least 2 public hearings, including the submission of written comments within 60 days prior to approval. And so this entire process will take us through to December for our December board meeting, and within that will be that period of time where additional comments can come in. And so for this evening, what I'd like to do is just go through the presentation of Making Proud Choices, the curriculum that we're trying to bring forth for selection for the district. And so Making Proud Choices is an evidence-based program and focuses on evidence-based sexual health, and it's a curriculum designed to inform teens. And we'll kind of talk through how we got to this point. One of the key things is it's an 8-week program or an 8-session program, and it's designed for our 8th grade students. So it'll be 8th grade only for this. And we'll talk about some of the other components of it as we move through. So what was really important for us was really looking at the data to determine the need for a program like this. Why would we do something like this? And what was the purpose for it? And so last year, we actually entered into a pilot program with a couple of our schools within the district. And at those schools, we worked with 8th grade students who did an opt-in for this program. And it was during that, we looked at this data to help us get to that point. So we looked at Glendale, and then we looked at Arizona, and we looked at the number of rates of certain STIs within our area. And those are identified on the screen here. And we'll notice that Glendale is higher in each of those categories than the general number in Arizona. So we knew to bring it to our district, it could bring some value to our district in terms of decreasing the number of STIs in the Glendale area. So as we looked at this project, we looked at STIs and we looked at birth rates as well. And so we wanted to just look at being healthy, being aware, and providing information for our students. And so the 4 major components of this that we focused on are the goals, the knowledge, beliefs and attitudes, and then skills and self-efficacy. And really that self-efficacy piece came out to be really important as we went through, because there was a survey that was provided to our students pre and post, and we'll talk about that in a minute here, which kind of showed how their understanding improved, therefore helping them make better decisions. And again, that was through that pilot project that we did. So the program itself would be opt-in per policy and statute. Statute that went in and then policy that was approved by the board, it would be an opt-in. So parents must sign consent to involve their child in it. And so during the pilot process, what we did was Mrs. Ariano did a great job of supporting school administration to reach out to families, to talk to them about the program, and then to see if they were willing to have their kids opt into the program. If they did, they signed off on it. We had a permission form for them. If they did not, we had another classroom where those students could go and participate in other school-based activities. And so for the project itself, there was a pre and post survey, as I mentioned earlier. And so students, if you look at this and you look at the margin of difference on the far right, we saw significant increases in students' knowledge towards these different areas. And so the areas that you see some of the greatest gains, if you look at question number 3, abstinence is an effective method for preventing HIV/AIDS infections, and we saw how that increased significantly for our students, the difference in terms of their knowledge, for a plus 72% increase in differences. Okay, I'll go ahead and move ahead to the next slide here. And so just a couple of responses. We wanted to share some of the information that some students stated about this pilot project and what they received from it. So just a couple of things, and I won't read through all of those for you. And it was interesting, a couple of questions that I really liked, or responses, when you looked at towards the end, when you looked at the male students. The group I was in was amazing. They understood what we were asking and how we felt. And that really means they made a connection with the students, and that connection really led to their growth and understanding. And so for preparation for us to get to this point, to bring it for the beginning of this adoption process, is we worked with Touchstone. And so the reason Touchstone is here with this is Touchstone is a partner with us because they're providing funding, they're providing training, they're providing resources and support to help us through this process. So it's slightly different than most processes where you'd come in with a variety of curricula. Because they're coming as a partner and they'll provide the training, funding, resources, all of those pieces, it makes this kind of unique, but it also makes it fun and exciting because we'll have someone who's an expert in this area who can provide the support. Each school and our process that we plan on doing for this, if adopted by the board in December, our process that we hope to take moving forward is to allow each site to determine who becomes their trainer. And we know we'll need one male, one female trainer at each site. We'll have to have rooms where kids, for those who aren't opted into the program, they can go into those rooms and receive other services or other activities to do during that time. Again, remember, it's 1 hour per session for 8 sessions. But when looking at this curriculum, what we did was before the pilot, parent sessions were offered. So we actually had a parent group that came in, asked them some questions, got their feedback, and used that feedback to help us kind of move forward before even entering into the pilot portion of this. For the curriculum review, to determine that Making Proud Choices was the correct curriculum, there were a couple criteria that was used to help identify that. And one was it medically accurate? Was there inclusivity in it? Cultural competence, age appropriateness, and so on. And so there are a lot of things that were taken into account when there was a vetting of this program. And one thing I forgot on the training, and right here, since we're at that, with facilitator training, along with training our staff, Touchstone will co-teach it as well. And so our staff is not in there alone. And part of why we wanted to do the sites will select staff is we wanted to make sure it was staff who was comfortable with it. Oftentimes people will say, well, it's just going to be an 8th grade teacher or a PE teacher, or, well, it's who's the teacher that's comfortable engaging in this, partnering with an outside agency to support us on our campuses to support our students that are opted into this program. And then, so our opportunity, if you see the timeline of where we're going, last year was the pilot. This year, we would, if adopted, we would go through training, and then moving into next year, it will be the implementation of the program. And the way the training is set up, funding is set up, and we would receive the materials, then we would sustain it after that point as we continue training our own staff. That's it for the presentation. Are there any questions?
Okay, board members, anybody have any questions, comments?
Yes, Madam President, I do have a question. It looks like we're addressing only the 8th grade. Is there a reason we're starting with 8th grade?
So the original intent for us was really, as we piloted, just to look at the students we felt, based on some of the data that we had, was the best starting point for us. So we figured that was the right group to start with. If we see successes within the program and we do more surveys, then we could possibly looking at bringing forward to look at other grades in this process. But right now, the 8th grade was where we thought maturity level, the need, the data, all of that supported.
Thank you. And I do have another question. It showed here when we looked at birth rates and STDs, it said in the Glendale area. Is that all of Glendale, or are we looking specifically in our zip codes? The 3 zip codes?
Yep.
Thank you.
So the board is going to have a chance to take a look at this program, is that correct?
Correct. So what our intent is we wanted to go through our public hearing tonight. Beginning tomorrow, we'll post it, so you'll be able to access it electronically or virtually. But also we'll have a physical copy in this building, so if anyone wants to come into the building, they'll be able to request to review it, and we have a space that we'll have set up over on the educational services side of the building.
Yeah, I'll probably have more questions after taking a look at it. But do you know if GESD has ever had sex ed before? Seems to me we have. Am I?
So I'll defer.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, yes, we did have sex education a while back.
Is there a reason why we didn't continue, or do you know? You probably don't.
No, we weren't required, so we didn't continue at that time.
Okay, I have a question. So are we going to have the materials available at each school site?
So the materials will be available at this site, but then virtually, so people can go online and look at the materials as well.
All right. Do we have a way for parents, will they be able to utilize the student technology to access that electronically if they can't go get here?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
yes.
I have a question. What was the opt-in rate that you saw of those students that were invited?
Good evening, Madam President, governing board members, Superintendent Sagata Jones. So in the pilot program, we had Imes and Burton during distance learning. We had more females than males participate. We had 9 females participate during distance learning. So then when we came back to in-person, we had, I would say, about a 98% rate. What we found out that when we sent home the consent forms, the opt-in forms, after Juana Hernandez, our secretary, and myself made the phone calls home, most parents did not get the form. And the parents right away would start laughing, and they suggested perhaps their child was embarrassed. But every parent we talked to either said, of course, or explained, yes, my son doesn't want to talk about this. We only focused on males because we already had the female group, but we wanted to get data from the boys. So we had all students but 4 boys from Burton, 8th grade. And I believe we had 23 males from Burton. And then from Imes, it was 100%. And off the data, our male students grew much more knowledge than the female students. However, the female students, based on the data, knew more coming into the class than the males, according to the surveys.
Okay. So because of that possibly nervousness, is that why staff has to reach out to the parents a little bit more frequently to make sure that they are getting that information if they choose to want their child to participate?
Yes, I believe so. So it was a learning experience, so we'll definitely come up with develop a strategic plan. And then I think it will be easier too, having them there in class, being in person, whereas that was just a different experience for all of us. But yes, we will have a strategic plan.
Okay. All right. Are there any more questions or comments from the board?
I have a question. In the presentation material, there were, a couple words, and I just wanted to know a little bit more about what the inclusivity is and cultural competency is.
So when we talk about the inclusivity piece, it was to ensure that no group was either alienated, highlighted, or kind of highlighted in an overly negative or positive way. It was really to make sure that things were neutral. So a lot of the questions are gender neutral to ensure that everyone felt that it would be a safe environment for them to learn in as they read the questions, that they didn't feel, I guess to use today's terminology, any type of way, like, why are you pointing at me? Why are you judging me? But because it's neutral, it allows all students to feel as though they're a part of this curriculum. And as far as the cultural competency, it was to look at what are some of the things that various cultures, things that are, and actually, let me have you come up on that one.
So for the cultural piece, there's always scenarios that in the beginning of each module, and then the students can practice with. So specific, in the beginning, they set the stage, set the norms, and they talk about the language that they use at home when sex is talked about. So and then they make like a vocabulary sheet. So they write what they would hear normally at home, but the vocabulary they're using during the curriculum, so everyone has a clear understanding of what is being taught during each module. And then the names can also be changed, and it's clearly stated throughout each module, so it represents the population being taught in that class or in that group.
All right. I have one more, I guess, question. So when you said that it would be neutral, and then at the beginning of the presentation, it showed, the zip code of 85, whatever, our areas in Glendale, not necessarily our zip code, but just Glendale. And so is that brought up, to say, oh, you need to know this, or is it this is just for our information right now?
So you're focused on the data. I'm not understanding your question. Could you?
Sure, I'll try it. So you showed, like in the beginning, that in Glendale, that this was, going on. There's, these issues in Glendale. But then, just a few minutes ago, you said, oh, we're going to make this neutral. So I'm asking, in this curriculum, are you bringing up the Glendale data, or is it just you're saying, oh, this is what, things that are going on, when you're having your sex talk, and not necessarily saying, because you live here, we really need to, focus on this, and this.
That's a great question. So I did. So Juana and myself, when we contacted parents, I wanted to be transparent and let them know the data, the statistics for Glendale, and we want to empower our students with making healthy choices. So when I went to talk to each classroom before handing out the opt-in permission slips, I did show them the data and explain it, that we want them to make better choices. When you have a baby at a young age, it can bring about many barriers, and we want to help them with their lives and make it more, not to have so many barriers to be successful. So yes, that data was shared with parents and students. And I hope we can still do that. It makes it so much more powerful when we share real data with them.
So the presentation that you're going to, the curriculum that you're going to be showing the parents, it will have the data or associated with the presentation that parents are going to be looking at right now?
We can do that, yes, most definitely. We did at the last group, parent focus group, we did share the data, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any further questions or comments from the board? Okay. So I guess at this time I need to find out if there are any questions from our audience. This is the time to ask them. All right. I am not seeing any. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
So at this time, I need a motion to reconvene regular meeting.
I will motion to reconvene.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Ms. Pimentel?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. All right, moving on to call to the public at this time. We do not have any this evening. So we are now on item 3, our consent agenda. Are there any board members that have any items they wish pulled aside for discussion? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion.
I will motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
And Ms. Pimentel?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. All right, we are now on 4, reports and information. Item A is GESD Health Benchmarks Update. Ms. Sagata-Jones.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, again, Dr. Lafitte will present the health benchmarks.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Sagata-Jones. So for our update this week, we'll see that for our county metrics for Maricopa County, we're still in the high transmission rate. The numbers flattened out for this week. It's a true flat number there. But when we look at our district metrics, we're starting to see an increase again. Not sure how long this trend may go in this direction, but we have seen a pretty decent jump in our cases per 100,000% positivity. We have seen a slight increase, pushing us a little bit closer to 20%. In terms of our zip codes, what we'll notice is last week was our last set of metrics. We saw the increase in 85302. This time, that's where we see our decrease, though it's slight. But in 85301 and 85303, we see roughly a 20% increase in both of those zip codes in both cases per 100,000 and percent positivity, pushing us in the 260 cases per 100,000 range. As a district, we have seen an increase as well, where some of our other surrounding districts are seeing decreases. We've seen an increase, probably the largest in terms of numbers or in terms of percentage increase between last week and this week, moving from 208 cases per 100,000 to 247. So just a gradual increase over the past 3 weeks. Not sure how that data is going to project out. Even when looking at our daily numbers, again, those numbers are pretty consistent with what they've been. If you notice, on September 26th, there is a pretty large jump there. That's actually 3 days worth of data in that point. So just be aware of that. When you see that jump, it's not that one day. It was actually 3 days, because I believe, if I'm correct, that was the time when we had 3 days where the data didn't come in daily. Okay, and that's it for the metrics. Any questions?
Okay, any board members have questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we are going to move on to 4B, the new regulation.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, we'd like to look at new regulation, and Mr. Berrigan is going to present that.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Segata-Jones, on behalf of Ms. Valadez, I am going to do my very best to present this to you. This proposal before you is really an attempt to address some of the COVID-19 challenges when an employee may not have sufficient accrued time. So this would almost be a supplemental to the current sick leave balance in the sense that we're offering a different program that's specific to COVID. And as you can see through the documents that have been provided to you, it's optional. Employees throughout the district would be able to donate towards this COVID sick leave bank. And when there's a need, that employee could then participate and receive up to 6 days of leave time. And this is an attempt to really address those individuals that, for whatever reason, may not have the sufficient accrued leave. Madam President, members of the board, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So my understanding that the staff that's going to receive, it's a one-time that they can receive the funds.
Madam President, members of the board, Member Wilson, that is correct. And it has to be for the employee only. In other words, if my child was sick, I could not use this sick leave for that. It has to specifically impact the district employee in order for this to apply.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Am I correct in looking at this that it's hour for hour and it's not hours converted into dollars?
Madam President, members of the board, Member Pimentel, the request from donating employees would say, for example, there's John Doe who wants to donate 8 hours. That 8 hours goes into that bank, and then there's a Jane Doe who needs 5 hours. That individual would then be able to use 5 hours, as an example, towards that employee's sick leave, and would be an attempt to make that employee whole as best as possible. I hope that answered the question.
I think so. So just it's as an example, I've seen where employers If I'm an employee that makes $10 an hour and I donate to somebody who makes $5 an hour, I donate 10 hours, that person's going to get way more in their own sick bank.
Madam President, members of the board, Member Pimentel, it's hour for hour, as I understand it.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments?
I have a question. Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, go ahead. Thank you. Hey, on this thing, when you're just describing that it's only for the employee, and you said it's not, if they have a sick child, but in our current mitigation plans, if you're in close contact, then you have to go home. So what we're saying is that they can only use this sick bank if they are currently positive and not if they're having to quarantine because of close contact with someone?
Madam President, members of the board, Member Smith, if I could refer you to the actual document, it is the employee has to have supporting documentation that shows that that employee has tested positive for COVID. It would not apply if I were quarantined because of a close contact. It has to be a positive COVID test.
Okay, Mr. Martinez?
Well, she actually stole my question. But I do have another question. With a maximum of 6 days, is there any anticipation of how much this will actually, 6 days is not a lot. And by the time that you've exhausted all of your available leave and get to the point where you can draw on this leave bank, it seems like you're kind of in it for the long haul at that point. So I have to wonder how useful 6 days will be. So do we have any information on how much time people have had to take off?
Madam President, members of the board, Member Martinez, let me explain a little bit the idea behind the 6 days. When someone is quarantined or is out, typically it's 10 days. And so just as a friendly reminder that employees receive 2 days of personal business up front, and I believe 2 sick leave days up front, so that gets them 4. So the idea that they could have 6 in a normal, I don't know if normal is even the right word, but in the course of someone being out, we see that 10 days is what's recommended by medical professionals. And so it was the 4 plus the 6 gets you to 10.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? Okay, moving on. We're at action items, 5A. First one is policy revision, second reading. Ms. Sagata-Jones?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the second reading and adoption of the proposed revisions to the policies as presented in BDF advisory committees, BBBI, board member development communities, GCH, professional support staff orientation and training, and JFB open enrollment, and JLF reporting child abuse and child protection. And this is where you received the information regarding the policy that came out on Friday that we had to change. And that one is GCH.
Any questions or comments from the board? All right, at this time I need a motion.
I motion to approve the second reading of the attached policies.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Ms. Pimentel?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Motion passes. We are now on 5B. That's the annual financial report. Ms. Sagata-Jones?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, this time I'll turn it over to Mr. Berrigan and his team.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Sagata-Jones, October 15th, statute requires that the board either on or before that date approve of the annual financial report. In this presentation, we will also be complying with some of the reporting requirements specifically for bonds and overrides embedded in this presentation. You know, I often joke about when I have the opportunity to talk about the budget or the annual financial report that it's an hour long and there's like 30 million slides. But tonight I wanted to take the opportunity to really spend a little bit more time in walking you through the annual financial report because of the challenges that we've encountered last year that I believe we're encountering this year and that we're going to continue to encounter over time. So the importance of understanding financially, you know, where we were last year, and kind of the results of that. So we are going to take a little bit more time with that tonight. I want to thank Valerie and Courtney. They really are the brains behind this. They're the ones really working behind the scenes in the system, pulling the data, and it would not be right if I did not acknowledge them. So really, they are the brains behind this. We're going to expand on some of the normal funds that we talk about. As you know, we talk about maintenance and operation, unrestricted capital, bonds, some of the debt. We've also incorporated some of the federal funds that we've talked about because of the importance of those funds that assisted us to really keep our head above water this last year. And just to remind the board and the community that back in July of last year, you, the board, approved of a $72.3 million budget. And that was in July, you know, June, July. And then when we did that final revision in May, we had to actually reduce the budget to $57.4 million. It was a reduction of $15 million. And that was specific to the decrease in average daily membership, which is, you know, the students that we have. And so to give you an idea of that budget, we were end up spending just shy of $56 million. And so it's broken down by categories. You know, we've always said that, you know, salary and benefits are the biggest expense in our organization. What I want to point you to is the budget balance carry forward, just shy of $1.5 million. We're about a 3.1%. In preparation for this, I asked Valerie to really go back and pull, at least going back to 2010. And so to kind of give you an idea, the lowest budget balance carry forward that we had prior to the one that we're showing you was in 2010, and that was just shy of $1.7 million. You know, we've been very conscious of having a carry forward because of all the outside external agencies that look at it, whether it's a rating agency, some of those investors that are looking to, you know, buy bonds from the district. And, you know, $1.5 million, just shy of that, is the lowest that we've had, at least in the last, you know, 10, 11, 12 years now. So the importance of that decreasing, we wanted to highlight that here tonight. You may recall when we did the public hearings, when we had the community forums, we went into the community and we talked about those financial challenges, how we were going to overcome those financial challenges. And the only way that we could really do that was by using the federal dollars that were coming into Arizona. And so what we wanted to show you was the award amount, what we projected at the time that we did those community forums, that we were in the community, we did those public hearings, and then kind of show you what we actually did. So I won't necessarily go through all of them, but to give you an idea, and I'm just going to really focus on ESSER 2. We were generating or received just shy of $19.8 million. We thought we would use about $9 million of that to get us through this last year. In reality, it was about 10.3. And so just what we projected, about 14.3 in total, to what it really was of just over, you know, 15.6 million, gives you an idea of what we needed to do to get through last year because of the significant decrease in enrollment. The federal dollars Had those not been available, the district would have overspent its budget. And so it just shows you the importance of those federal dollars that they had in our district. Those monies were needed to just maintain the same level of service that we had committed to in the summer. And just to point out, whatever monies are left over, we're moving those into the following year, and those monies are and will continue to be used to keep our head above water, so to speak.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Sagata Jones. So we broke down the ESSER funds, the federal funds, and how we spent them. And the majority of it did go to help us keep up with our salaries and benefits. That was 74%. And the remainder were purchased services and supplies, and a small amount on equipment. And here's a historical look at what our ADM has looked like. We ended 2021 at 8,182, and we projected high for our adopted budget at 10,248, and right now we are preliminary looking at 8,624. So we're still, we've taken a bump up from 21, but we're still trajecting down.
And Madam President, members of the board, in conversations that we've had in executive team, what we want to make sure that everyone understands is when we built last year's budget, based on the demographic study that we do on an annual basis, we believed we would have about 10,500 students. That wasn't the case. I shared with you when we proposed and adopted the budget in the summer that this by far was the most difficult budget to build, because the question was, what ADM do we use, knowing that it's been a difficult last 18, 24 months? And the only way that we felt, we did two things. One, we knew that from a prudent financial perspective, we needed to do two things. One, assume that ADM was going to be around that 8,100. But also recognizing that if that number went up just slightly, could we be in a position that we lost revenue? So the decision that was made and the guidance that I gave Valerie was we have to be, at least for now, use the demographic studies numbers or the percentage that we take from that, knowing that we were going to have to decrease. And so we used 10,248 to build the budget, knowing that, more likely that was going to decrease. And so, as Valerie pointed out, you're looking at about 8,600 ADM, and so that's going to be another drop that we're going to have to take from that budget that you approved back in the early summer. Go for it. I'll touch on it.
Next, we're going to go over our special education expenditures, and this is solely out of M&O. And so the funding produced by our Group B weights is $7.1 million. However, our expenditures are almost at $14 million for 21. And this exceeds our revenues by 6.8 or 81%.
Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Sagata Jones, every year when the board is talking about what legislative agenda it should present to ASBA, there's three things that I believe you've heard from this administration, and that's special education, transportation, and we need to start talking about poverty and having some type of poverty weight. And so this just goes to point out the revenue to the expense. And while those percentages might look different for every district, the gap, my guess is, and just even in conversations that I've had, and some of the data that I've looked at, there's a significant disparity between the revenue and the expense. And just to give you an idea, the last time the state did a special education study was in 2007, and I can tell you that we've, as part of our, the group that we're part of, we've attempted on many occasions to get the state legislature to do that special education report or analysis. And I want to point out, if and when that is done, it's going to highlight the disparity between funding and what is actually needed. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind. This is not isolated to Glendale. This is a big issue facing Arizona as a whole.
And here's a look at transportation. With 2021 COVID, there wasn't as much transportation routes since kids were virtual, so we did see that decline as far as fuel, salaries, that made up the decline. And our M&O override in 21 was about 9.3 million, and we're very thankful to the voters for continuing that override. And here is how we spent it. It was an all-day K, PE, music and band, art, media literacy, educational assistance, and classroom supplies. So everything definitely in the classroom.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Scott-Jones, we've tried to change the colors many times on this chart. But our hope is that what you take away from this is a couple years ago now, we've communicated that the use of Classroom Site Fund, Funds 11 and 13 in particular, needed to be used to offset salary and benefits for some of our staff members. And that's because of that declining enrollment, and so we've been using that a little bit more. So we wanted to provide some historical perspective. Please ask any questions. If you look at 15-16, the darker yellow, so from the left to the right, the orange, and then there's the yellow. The left bar graph will represent the budget amount that we're eligible, and then that lighter yellow is the actual expense. And you can kind of just see what that's looked like in 16, 17, 18. And then we get, I believe, the first year that we started doing this was in 1920. So we started to spend more because we needed to relieve the maintenance and operation budget. And then when you get to 21, that's where you see literally where the revenue and the expense are almost, to the penny. And more specifically, if you have your devices in front of you, I would encourage you to go to page 4 of 12 of the PDF. And I'm going to point you to row 17 or line 17. Do you see a negative $1? Yeah. One, it's rounding, so it obviously defaulted to the negative $1. But you're basically, at this point, for that year, the money we brought in was the exact same dollar amount that we spent. Again, there's the dollar rounding. And let me jump to Fund 13. So please go down to line 54. I believe that's a negative $2, and again, that's a rounding thing, but a negative 2. So in other words, again, the money coming in is the exact same dollar that is being spent. The point of that is to show that we've had to move expenses from M&O into other funds to maintain the levels of service, whether that's staffing, whatever it might be. This is going to be more specific to teachers in the classroom. Fund 12, which is the performance pay, if you will, because of historically there's been an accumulation there. You can just see that. It kind of just shows you revenue to expense. We're not going to be in the same position moving forward in Funds 11 and 13. At least I don't believe that now, outside of 22, that will be maintained. In other words, we're getting to just every dollar coming in is what we're spending to just try to maintain those level of services.
Now we're going to move over into capital, and in FY21, our expenditures were $4.8 million compared to $6.2 the previous year. We did decrease 1.8. There were, with COVID, not as many projects going on, and then we also shifted some of that work over to bond dollars, and not just all capital. So tech was a big piece. 63% of capital spending did go to technology for students. And here's just a comparison of how we've, the revenues we've brought in and the expenditures for capital. As you can see, even though ADM has decreased, now that they're restoring capital funding, we've seen those revenues increase from the past few years, and we spend around $5 million average over the last couple of years. Performance contracting, the board approved for performance contracting in 2013, and those 3 phases were for upgrades to HVAC, lighting, water heaters, and controls. And part of the offset to that performance contracting is that we would reduce our utility expense. And compared to 2020, that was one of our lower years, and that was because of COVID. A lot of the classrooms were empty. We're still lower than we were in 2019, which is the baseline to use to see a decrease, and we did see that decrease into 2021. And bond expenditures, here's the breakout of how bond expenditures were spent. About $1 million. The big part of it was HVAC, and second was flooring renovations. We did a lot of carpeting throughout the like K3, I believe. Can we do this one? Here's a look at our current bond, and we don't have short-term debt. So our bonds outstanding as of July 1, 2020 was $29,120,000. We did have a bond issue in 21, so we brought in $13.6 million, and we retired $2.5 million in bonds. So right now our bonds outstanding are $40,180,000. Building renewal grants in FY21. We spent about $500,000 in building renewal grants that were funded through the Arizona School Facilities Board, and the majority of those dollars were for roof restoration across the district and a portion to construction administration.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Scott Jones, this classroom spending report is something that I believe is issued by the Auditor General on March 1st of every year. The information that you see is from the prior year. We've never shied away from this discussion. This is the 21 column is what we believe the Auditor General will release in March, on March 1st in particular. And you can just kind of go through the line, administration, a 0.5% decrease. When we were analyzing this data, one of the things that really stood out to us was the plant operations. And you see that in 20, it was 10.8, and then it jumps to 12%. Typically, you know, especially with the slide that we showed you on utilities, you would think that that would have decreased. And so I think the first thing I said to Valerie, I said, Valerie, that doesn't look right. We need to pull that specific, that data, those expenses for that category. And one of the things that stood out was the outside contractor, the janitorial service that did the COVID-19 disinfecting. That was about $1 million. And so that in itself inflated that plant operation. So, you know, when that goes up, classroom dollars automatically go down. So we thought that was very important. And the other thing that you're going to see is the food and nutrition, the decrease there. And again, when you look at, and it's in your, it's part of the agenda item tonight. If you even look at the food service annual financial report from 20 compared to 19, 21 compared to 20, you're just going to see the meals that we were handing out that were reimbursable were significantly decreased. So that kind of accounts for some of that. So again, understanding the data that's there, I think is important. Again, the far right column is what we believe the Auditor General will show on March 1st. And then usually when that occurs in some form, we try to let you know, hey, this is what we believed was going to be that calculation or these percentages, and this is what it actually was. I think you guys are all used to kind of the final thoughts. As many of you know, that on Prop 206 was approved that requires minimum wage to go up. It's going from $12.15 to $12.80. That will impact over 300 employees. What I think is important in this conversation is also the acceleration of salary compression and what that does to any organization. And so with every January 1st, you're going to see that number grow, and it's going to grow pretty rapidly moving forward. Look at inflation. Inflation was, I believe, 5.3. Ironically, the inflation that we get for base support funding is not the same calculation. It can never be more than 2%. So do you see where an expense in this category was about 5.2, 5.3, yet the revenue on the inflation is at max 2%. Increased competition has been a challenge, and our decrease in revenue, which automatically results in less revenue. Because of the circumstances, we have to really be looking and monitoring revenue and expenses, which perhaps is nothing new, but I think highlighting it under the circumstances that we're finding ourselves in is important. And we're going to continue with the marketing plan. I think that under the superintendent's leadership and the communications office, you're seeing that consistently the district is marketing on a weekly basis. And so kudos to them for doing that. That's going to help. The M&O override, you heard Valerie talk about that. She talked about the bond and how those dollars have been used. Just as a reminder that not this November, but the following November would be, I believe, year 4. And historically in year 4, the district has gone out for seeking additional extension or authorization from its voters. The question becomes what political challenges are in that year and in the subsequent year, and that's something that we all need to be mindful of. And just as a friendly reminder, capital lawsuit's been going on for 4 years, and we're still plaintiffs in that. I can tell you that we received an update today. I'll be meeting with legal counsel, I believe, on next Wednesday. I believe they presented at the ASBA conference, if my memory serves me correctly. We're still part of that, and we're going to continue to advocate for additional capital funding. Madam President, members of the board, I do know and realize that was a longer presentation than usual, but under the circumstances, we believe that it was critical that we walked you through that, the community through that, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, board members, do we have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I would just like to say thank you. This is, you made this much more, if I could use the word enjoyable, much easier to understand. And I appreciate the time that you took to do this, you and your team. Thank you. It's definitely an eye-opener.
I have a couple questions.
Ms. Smith?
Okay, I just want some clarification on the presentation. When you had the slide that talked about the ESSER funds, and I just want to make sure. So it said that we were awarded. So is it cash in hand, or is it something that could affect us because it's really not cash in hand yet? Kind of like our state has given us, rollover money, and I've been seeing, in the news about, we might not get our funds. So can you let us know if you actually have the ESSER money and it's not something to worry about?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Member Smith. In the ESSER 1, it is real cash at the county treasurer. The enrollment stabilization grant was received, I want to say in January, and shortly thereafter it was used and spent to, again, meet the needs of the M&O. And then ESSER 2 was approved, I want to say towards the late July, maybe even early August, and that is on a reimbursement basis. I can tell you that the monies that were spent, the 10.2, I believe, if not all of that, most of that has been received by the district. And then ESSER 3, staff is working on that. We're going to spend next week working on that, which is why you haven't seen it here. We do know what the award would be. It has not been approved yet, But the ones that are on the screen have been approved, cash has been received, and we will continue to use some of that into this year. We've already used most of the ESSER 2 and almost, if not 100%, like 95% of that ESSER 1. So yes, that is real cash in the bank, or it will be every time we make that request for reimbursement.
Okay, and then my second question, this is my last question too, so, Mr. Martinez knows he can go, is you had said that there wasn't a special ed study since 2007, and I thought there was something that the state actually had a committee to start looking at that. Do you know what the state is actually doing with special ed? Because I swear they're doing something.
Madam President, members of the board, Member Smith, time is a blur, so please forgive me. There have been a lot of discussions in the past. Our district, along with others, have advocated to the legislature to do a special education study. They said maybe they started, but it never went through. I can tell you, I believe that Superintendent Hoffman and her team are working on doing that special education study. It's going to take some time, but I believe it's at the Superintendent Hoffman's department.
Okay. Mr. Martinez?
Thank you. I just wanted to say congratulations on your budget balance carry forward, the 1.485. That's a good number. It's not like I want to make sure that everyone's aware. It's not like a normal savings account where you want a huge chunk of money in there. You don't want to carry over $30 million year after year, but that's a solid number, and I can appreciate that. So thank you very much for being a good steward of our money.
Thank you.
Well, and I think you did a very good job, especially last year when we had the community meetings with regards to, unfortunately, having to close down schools. The reality is we were already in a declining enrollment scenario, and COVID just knocked us on the ground. It just sucker punched everybody, but it really hit us. And the fact that we had to use over $15 million of these federal reliefs just to stay afloat. I think the general public needs to understand we weren't just, $100,000 overspent. This reality was very, very stark and very, very painful.
Madam President, members of the board, perhaps in closing, I'd like to say that while some or other districts were able to use those federal dollars to do things above what they normally do, we were not in that same position, generally speaking, to the point that was just made by President Bartels. $15 million needed to be used to kind of balance the budget and allow us to continue to operate. And I will continue to say, without those federal dollars, we would have overspent our budget. The enrollment stabilization grant for Glendale Elementary School District did not do what the governor said it would do. And I think that's important for everyone to understand, specifically in our committee. It may have worked somewhere else, but it has not worked here, and I think that's an important point to be made.
Yeah, I would just like to say, too, that I appreciate your spending a little more time on this today, the in-depth presentation. And I would like to see more of that, because I think it's important that we, get that drilled into our heads, and that the community needs to continually be reminded of the situation that we're in, and how we are not getting funded in a lot of these areas. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any more questions or comments? All right, hearing none, need a motion.
I will motion to approve the 2021 annual financial report.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Ms. Pimentel?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Moving on, we are now at item 5C. That is the Arizona School Boards Association bylaw change proposal. Oops. Now, did everybody have the opportunity to read through this and understand what it is ASBA is asking?
I thought they had done this already, or that they had discussed it, and it was a few years ago, and I don't know why it's never been actually implemented.
I can answer that question, because the existing bylaws for the association require a very high threshold in order for any bylaw changes to occur. So the last several years, when after they changed to electronic voting, we still never had the full, you need, I think it's 2/3 affirmative vote of all the member districts. So if there are 220 districts, 2/3 of them have to vote for the change. So I think the highest point we got to was maybe 100 affirmative votes on a change that came through, and it still didn't hit the threshold.
Wow, it's just,
So-
I mean, it's just, it's a no-brainer, really.
Right,
You look at it, yeah.
right.
I'm sorry, if I could ask a question, would that be 2/3 of the total districts or the districts in attendance?
2/3 of all the districts registered with ASBA have to vote yes for it to go through. And that's the hiccup that they've had on every amendment change that they've tried to put past in the last several years. Okay.
It's overdue.
Are there any more questions or comments on this item? Okay. Hearing none, I need a motion to adopt the,
I will motion to approve the Arizona School Board Association bylaw change.
Second.
okay, I have a first and a second. Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Ms. Pimentel?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Board Member Bartels, you need to say who is going to cast that vote,
Oh,
a motion to cast the vote. Who will be doing that?
Ms. Powell will submit that electronically on our behalf as an affirmative.
Fine. It just needs to be out loud.
Okay. So did they need to redo the motion? Okay. Please redo the motion.
I motion to have a yes vote authorized on our behalf, submitted by the district.
Second.
Okay. We'll go through this again. Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Ms. Pimentel?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
And Ms. Smith?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Motion passes. We are now on item 6A, Superintendent Evaluation Instrument.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, you have in front of you the superintendent's evaluation rubric. I was given the task of creating the rubric to share with you through a board update and then bring it to the board meeting. The directions were to try to align it to the administrative evaluation tool that's used, as well as look at what was used in the past, and then also if I received any feedback from the governing board members. I did receive a tool from Board Member Wilson to look at, so I used those to create it, and then the format is aligned, pretty much mirrors what you will see with a school administrator, using highly effective, effective, and developing. I did not put ineffective in there. I think I've stated before, if your superintendent's ineffective, they shouldn't be your superintendent. And so I did not include ineffective in there. They're set with standards, and the standards come from administrator standards as well as the Association for Superintendents, national standards from there. And then they're divided, as you can see, in domains, and there's 7 of those domains in there. And then they're put into the areas, the indicators of highly effective, effective, and developing. So then once you go through the instrument, when we get to the oh, now it's working when I slammed it. Okay, so when we get to the actually evaluation of the superintendent, then I would bring to you the artifacts that would indicate what I've done to meet these standards, and then you would use those artifacts in discussions with me to rate either highly effective, effective, or developing. So that's what I have presented for you, and then at this time it's up for the governing board to discuss.
Mr. Martinez, want to start first?
Yes, sure. First of all, I appreciate the work that you put in there. I can appreciate having seen a number of these and having to work on developing a number of these rubrics for my own employer. I can really appreciate all of this, and I really have my hopes up with how well the superintendent evaluation is going to go the next time around, as opposed to the 5-hour marathon study session that we had last time. I think the rubric makes a lot, and the artifacts that you will bring will make it a lot easier for us to be effective when we do this evaluation. So thank you for the effort you put in. I look forward to using it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm real pleased with the outcome of this, and I think the amount of time that you put into this is, evident. And it's just going to make it a lot easier for us to have the discussions that we need, and it's just a little more clarifying in a lot of areas. So, I think it's good.
Thank you.
I'm going to concur with everybody. This document is very detailed. It's much better than, I think, the 2-page thing we have in policy that is very vague. Mm-hmm. This is very, when I reviewed it, I went through what's effective and then went backward to what's developing and forward to what's highly effective. And I can really appreciate this. My employer doesn't have anything this good, and I don't work for any district, I'll say that. But this is, I agree with Board Member Martinez, this is going to make our job, I think, much easier. And with the artifacts, it's a wonderful document. Thank you for taking the time on this.
Thank you.
Well, and with everything that goes on in education, there are so many aspects that overlap. So, HR is one of them that appears in multiple places, and you can't do anything without the people, just like you can't do anything without the finances. But I think with this, along with the artifacts that will be presented to us, that will give us a really good position as to what we're looking at. And I can honestly say our tool prior to this board's tool that's used was even more vague. So that was yes, no, maybe, don't know. Mm-hmm. And, it wasn't clear at all. I think this one will actually be a lot more helpful to us all as we do that.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to type in. I agree with what everyone has said so far. And I had sent in a question, and all of you had seen my one concern about the draft. And my concern is, as we go about doing our role as a school board, our one responsibility besides really the budget and policy is hiring and evaluating our superintendents. And I have read lots of books about effective school boards, and the relationship and how our district becomes a highly achieving district, and it always deals with the board having information. And the only thing that I saw in this rubric was under domain 7 with the board, where it says to be highly effective, it says maintains relationships between the superintendent and governing board through periodic joint seminars, workshops, and training sessions. And for me, I feel that collaboration with the board is very important, and I don't feel that that's written in here. To me, like saying I will collaborate with the board should be kind of like when you go up to like you're highly effective in domain 6, where it says models as practice for others. I just feel like it should be collaborating with the board also. That would be something that I would just want to add to this instrument. That would be my only input on it. Otherwise, it's fantastic. It really is. It'll be nice.
Thank you, Board Member Smith. Maintains and collaborate relationships. Collaboration is, as I think Board Member President Bartel said, everything overlaps. Collaboration is throughout the rubric, but to add the word collaboration here would be fine to do that. On the governance piece, I strictly took it from what the responsibilities of the superintendent really are, and that's to make sure policy is enforced, make sure I am the sole instructor. The most important, I guess it reads in there as instructional leader, that I need to make sure I'm taking care of that. And the other piece of governance would be that I'm maintaining safe schools, and of course the other piece is the daily operations. All that has to be done with collaboration, and you see that throughout the rubric. But adding it into this piece as collaboration can easily be done through a domain or into maintains and collaborate, and I'm happy to take that recommendation.
Yeah, I think we have to keep in mind that the role of the board is to govern, and the role of the superintendent is to administer. So, yeah, I see the overlapping in the document.
So this is just a discussion item. It takes no action. So there are some things that wordsmithing, as I read through it so many times, I'll just wordsmith again, get it back out to you in the board update, and then it'll be ready for the time we get ready for the evaluation. The only other thing is that since it seems to be okay to move forward on, we'll have to look at determining what's the logic behind highly effective and effective, so that you know how many highly effective or effective equals a highly effective score, overall score. So that would be put in there, and I can easily run the logic now and put that in the next board update.
Okay. All right. Moving on. So we are now on item 6B, Arizona School Boards Association Law Conference. And I had submitted notes that I had taken that were more relevant to, the current reality that us, along with so many other districts around the country, we're dealing with. But I did notice a typo when I revisited it today. So for every $1 invested in high-quality early education that is spent, there's actually a $16 return into the community later on, not a $6 return. So, it is always cheaper to identify and course correct, a deficiency for a child in the beginning versus going back and doing interventions later on. And, if we can get to that point as a system that we're proactive versus reactive, that's always the better thing to do. But I at least shared my thoughts on, what I gained. So if anybody had any questions or comments.
I know I attended parts of that. I think most of the members of the executive and member of educational services as well attended the conference pieces as well. And, and we attend the pieces of which usually fall under our area with the teams to get new information. So very pleased with what was presented.
So I do think under the current, it was very eye-opening when they talked about the Parents' Bill of Rights and what that is, because people just assume it is all-encompassing, and it really is not. So that was a definite, I knew it wasn't as broad as the parents have been claiming it is, but I did not realize just how restrictive it was. Did anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, hearing none. We are now on item 7A, future meetings and agenda item requests. Ms. Zagata-Jones.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, as you could see in October 21st executive session, so you will go into the executive session with legal counsel to look at the board's interest for meet and confer. Then we'll talk about, it was requested discussion on equity and student discipline. I'm going to ask that we probably move that one back, and because we also at that same time have a deadline of October 30th for the board self-evaluation. So it usually takes a little bit longer. So if we're okay moving the discussion of equity and student discipline to the November meeting, that can give you more time for your self-evaluation and time for the meeting for the interests, or we can leave it. It's your choice. I just know past it's gone a little bit longer, so.
Now, with regards to the board self-evaluation, do we want board members to answer the?
They do the pre-evaluation?
Do that ahead of time so that we can actually have that in and have a summary ahead of time?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So when could we get those out, and when does Ms. Powell need those back by?
Yes, Ms. Powell can send those tomorrow, and then if you get them back, I don't have the calendar in front of me, but the 20th, she can compile it fairly easy, so.
Okay. All righty. Because then that will also expedite everything at that time. Okay. And then did any board members have items that they wish added to future agendas? Okay, hearing none. We are now on item 8A, Superintendent Report. Ms. Sagata-Jones.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, a couple things I'd like to talk about this evening, just to give you an update. Recruiting, we're doing a lot of recruiting. We had a job fair on Saturday, and we received 27 people attended, and many of those contacts were sent out to schools, and so that was good for us. As we shared before, other districts are trying to do the same thing, and just having low turnout. We were pleased to have the 27. We'll continue to do that. Right now, I think Ms. Ryan was at State Farm today doing that. Ms. Valadez is on an airplane returning home this evening, and she spent the day at BYU. She said she did have some contacts there, and so she was getting those out. So we'll continue to do that. Ms. Valadez and Ms. Ryan will be traveling most of October and November to job fairs, so we continue to look at those things. I want to announce at the back always that Smith and Harold W. Smith and Glendale American have their work, art and academics presented, so thank you to those students and staff for that. A reminder that HEDMA, our Historical Downtown Merchants, have their front porch festival this Saturday. That's why you see the scarecrows out front. We try to partner with HEDMA, so we're excited about that. Right now, parent-teacher conferences as we get ready to go into fall break. Thank you to our parents, students, and staff who are out attending those tonight. That's why our staff is not here, our principals and assistant principals. Again, what I sent you the news link when it occurred, a shout out to Smith School, working with Molina Health and Operation Warm. They were able to receive their coats for students at K3. We had over 340 students receive coats today. Last night, we were in a little bit of panic when we received notification that the boys' coats were lost in transit, and but they somehow appeared this morning, so we were very happy for that. That should also air on ABC 15, and a shout out to the principal and assistant principal Smith, and of course our director of communications, who has done a remarkable job for us. Then also I want to do a couple things. We have October Breast Cancer Awareness, Paint It Pink. We're really trying to make that an awareness for all staff and students and the community. So we would like to go ahead and take a picture of Paint It Pink at the end of the board meeting. And we appreciate you participating today. And you look lovely in your mask and your pink. And we're happy that Mr. Martinez has his pink mask on. I did tell Mr. Berrigan and Dr. Lafitte they would be wearing pink today. And so if you have time, you'll check the Twitter tomorrow, because Mr. Berrigan and myself and whoever else we can convince are going to paint our hair pink as well. And we did a pre-kickoff today, and I'll tweet all that out later, and then we'll do that tomorrow. October 22nd is a day in which all real kids wear pink, is what it is nationally. So we're going to try to paint GSD pink with that as well for awareness. And we're doing donations online to breast cancer awareness. So that's really the intent of that. At that time, I have two recognitions. And I'll turn it over to President Bartels to do the first recognition. If we could go down and do the presentations down on the floor. Yeah, because I didn't have, do we have, yeah, we don't have them.
Okay. Just so that, slide out, slide in. Tonight, we will be recognizing Mr. Mike Martinez. He received ASBA Certificate of Orientation. That is the first step in the training recognition that ASBA does, but that makes our full entire board eligible for the Total Board Award again, since our new guy has this magic piece of paper. Congratulations.
If you can go down, if we can go down and take pictures, and our Director of Communications will come up, Adriana, and help us with that.
Actually, ASBA did.
Because we like to tweak things out. So.
There we got balance.
Pink, pink, check, pink, pink.
Hey, it's blue.
I saw pink, my eyes are blurred. Thank you.
Put little smiley faces on all the masks.
Stay down here for the next one, please. At this time, we received this, and I'm going to read it. On behalf of the Arizona Board and staff, I'd like to ask you to join us and congratulate Mr. Mike Berrigan for being elected as a director on the ASBO International Board and being one of only 4 other Arizonans to be elected to the board. He is the first minority. I put that in. That wasn't written in there. Mike has been very involved in Arizona school finance issues and ASBO, including president in 2013. His integrity and character has served us well, and I know he will bring those same qualities to the national level, representing ASBO international members in Arizona. We look forward to these next 3 years with Mike on the board and to running him for vice president at the end of his term. Respectfully, Brian Mee, and he is the executive director of Arizona ASBO. Mr. Berrigan, on behalf of the governing board and the executive team, we'd like to present you with this award. We're honored to have you, Mr. Berrigan. Also, since we're down here, we're going to paint it pink, so everybody grab a pink, and let's come up. I'm asked the executive team to please join me. Madam President, members of the board, that concludes my report.
All right. Then we are now on item 8B, Governing Board Report. So, Ms. Wilson.
Well, actually, the only thing I have to say is I am just so glad to see that flag football is back. And I think we had quite a few participants. I think almost all the schools participated, and quite a few in the girls' team and the boys. I didn't get a chance to find out who won. Does anybody know?
Yeah, the rain.
Oh.
So we had to reschedule for Tuesday when we get back. Oh, sorry. We're rescheduling for October 19th.
Do we know who's in the finals?
I should know
No,
that,
we don't
but I
know
know Burton, Landmark, and I don't remember the other schools. I'm sorry. That's two of the schools for sure. Anybody know? Sorry, I should know that.
Well, good luck to those of you that are in the finals, and it's sure nice to hear all the commotion going on after school. And I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds here when I say we want to keep Mr. Martinez in our thoughts as he ties the knot on Sunday. And so I'm sure everything is going to go off without a hitch, and good luck to you and to Hope. And the next time we see you, you'll be married.
I know, right? Great. Thank you very much.
All right, Ms. Pimentel.
I would just like to say I'm really glad that we're doing this sexual health curriculum. I think it's important that our kids get the right information because, thinking back to when I was a kid and thinking the crazy things that I thought, going back to when you're 5 years old and you think that if you kiss a boy, it's going to put a baby somewhere. And and of course none of that's true, but those are the misnomers. So I'm really glad that our kids are getting the right information. So I'm really happy to see that. Thank you to the Molina Health Group for donating jackets to our kids. I don't know how many times every year it happens in the winter and I see kids and I'm cold in my car and they're standing there in a short sleeve shirt or shorts and it just breaks my heart. So thank you very much for doing that for our kids. I know it's much appreciated and I look forward to seeing the shoes because in the news article we got, it said that they're going to come back and do shoes and what kid doesn't need shoes to help them run faster. So that's wonderful. Thank you for everyone for wearing pink. It is breast cancer awareness. Please take care. Do whatever kind of screening you have to do and take care of yourself and encourage those you love. And it's also, although we didn't address this, it's also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I know that...
So wear purple too.
Wear purple too, yes, absolutely. And without going into much detail, if you see something, say something, save somebody's life. You never know that a phone call isn't going to be the thing that they need. And to the future Mrs. Martinez, you're making Mr. Martinez over here a lucky man. Congratulations.
I'm sure she will appreciate that. I'm sure she's not watching right now, and I hope she doesn't watch this video afterwards. So,
Mr. Martinez.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much. I want to echo Ms. Pimentel's sentiments on the sex education stuff. As we kind of learned from Ms. Bartel's report and other things we've all heard statistics, money and effort and resources put into kids in this age group pays huge dividends years from now. So every kid that we're able to educate about sexually transmitted diseases, about teen pregnancy, sexuality, all that comes back to us, or comes maybe not to us specifically because we're 8th grade for most of it, but we'll come back to the community in some way. So there should be value placed on that. My only thing that I don't like about it is that it's opt-in instead of opt-out. I would rather it be almost a requirement for everybody to go through. I remember my first sex ed class was in the 7th grade, and it was oh so awkward in a room filled with boys that were all in the 7th grade, and we didn't know anything. But again, we didn't have any internet, so we had no way to look up anything. So we were ignorant as opposed to being just wrongly informed. So thank you for putting all that together. Fall break coming up. If you have time off, I hope you enjoy it. I know the kids are going to enjoy it. I know my kids are looking forward to it. I have a big week coming up right here, so I'm going to be mostly out having fun, I hope. I hope everything goes smoothly without a hitch, because it's put a lot of stress in my life for the past, 5 years. But I hope you all take the time and enjoy and just kind of recoup, because we're going to start back up again in another week or so, and then we'll be right back in the thick of it, and we'll have a lot more decisions and big challenges coming up ahead of us. So thank you very much. And that's all.
Okay. Ms. Smith?
I just want to congratulate Mr. Bergon on his award, and also Mr. Martinez on his award and his upcoming ceremony. And I just want to say, enjoy your fall break.
Okay. And that leaves ditto for me. However, while Mr. Martinez will be watching his lovely bride walk down the aisle to him, my youngest son has challenged me to climb up a mountain in Colorado. So my goal is to not come down it the hard way. So I will keep you posted. But yes, everybody, congratulations on the achievements. We're at the first quarter mark. School year is moving. It's definitely different, but I'd rather have kids in school than be where we were, at the end of last year. With that being said, please, everybody, enjoy your fall break and stay healthy, stay safe. And with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And none opposed? Have a good week, everybody.